From WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Bostonred Network, this is This Week in Economics, our macroeconomics program. I'm Numbers Man, that's what we go on to hear. Nonetheless, we'll talk about GDP, where China is going. China has enormous debt and how that will balance out. Moody's downgraded their credit rating, and that is something to be looked at in terms of investment quality. The G7 has concluded its meeting in Italy, I believe it was, and what effects that has. They're talking about trade there. There was not a unanimous resolution on climate, part of their meeting. The American administration on the DJ Trump demurred, basically speaking. There was. He said he would make his mind up later, which doesn't matter. And we then have also the political component coming into this as we move forward here with the budget for the next 2 years, or the next year, I'm sorry. I was thinking of a different, some of the states. But also looking at other things there. Where's the travel ban going? Well, it's going to the Supreme Court. That affects the economics, particularly of Silicon Valley and where it revolves around university students, etc. Those things are still out there. The Republicans' healthcare plan, but passed by 3 or 4 votes, is very tenuous in the Senate, will affect the economy. It has part of the overall American economic situation. The score is finally out. Roughly about 24 million would lose their health care under the plan presented by the House that passed by the margin of 3 or 4 votes. Not very many votes at all. There's obviously not any mandate there, and where the Senate is going, nobody knows. But they have to have at least 52 votes to pass this. They do not have that at this time. And we'll talk a little bit about of that particular situation. We have a program on iHeart. It's called the GOP Help Bill and the Dark Side. The GOP Help Bill, the Dark Side. Invite you to listen to that particular one. But let's move on now to GDP. This is the latest out from the Bureau of Statistics. This was the Bureau of, in the U.S. it's called the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Anyway, nonetheless, this is national income, product accounts, gross domestic product, first quarter, the second estimate. Corporate profits, first quarter 2017 preliminary estimate here, dated on the 26th. It was released just Friday. Gross domestic product increased at a rate of 1.2% in Q1 of 2017. This is the second estimate in the fourth quarter. Real GDP increase at 2.1 in that's Q4. The estimate released today is based upon more complete data, we'll call it big data, and was available on the advanced estimate, which was issued last month. The advanced estimate, the increase in GDP was 0.7%, with the second estimate for the first quarter. The general picture of the economy remains the same. Increase in non-residential fixed investment and personal consumption, that is PCE, you'll hear that a lot, were larger, and decrease in state and local government spending was smaller than previously estimated. These revisions partly offset by a larger decrease in a private inventory. Gross domestic income, GDI, increased 0.9% in Q1, in contrast to a decrease of 1.4% revised in Q4. The average of real GDP and GDI, a supplemental measure of economic activity that equally weights GDP and GDI, increased at 1% in Q1 compared with 0.3% in Q4. Coming up on the annual update of national income and product accounts, the update here covering the first quarter of 2014 through the first quarter of 2017, released upon along with the advanced estimate of GDP for second quarter. That's Q2. That'll be on the 8th of July. Increase in real GDP in the first quarter reflects positive contributions from non-residential fixed investments, exports, residential fixed investments, PCI, that were partially offset by negative contributions from private inventory investment, federal government spending, state and local government spending. Imports were subtracted in the calculation. The deceleration in real GDP in the first quarter primarily reflects a downturn in private inventory investment and a deceleration in PCE that were offset by an upturn in exports and acceleration in non-residential fixed investment. Current dollar GDP increased at 3.4%, or $158.2 billion in Q1, to the level of 19 trillion 02.6 billion in the fourth quarter. Current dollar GDP increased at 4.2, or $194.1 billion. The index for gross domestic purchases increased at 2.6% in Q1, compared with an increase of 2% in Q4. The PCE index increased at 2.4%, compared with 2% in Q4, excluding energy and food. The PCE index increased 2.1%, compared with 1.3%. Updates to GDP, the percentage was revised up from the advanced estimate. We talked about that. And current dollar GDP in the advanced estimate was at 0.7, and now it's at 1.2%. Current dollar GDP at 3% in the advanced and 3.4% in the second estimate. The average real GDP and GDI at 1% here. Gross domestic purchase index is still at 2.2%, at 2.2% in the second estimate also. And the PCI price index at 2.2 and 2.4. No change there at all. Corporate profits, current production, corporate profits from inventory valuation adjustment and capital consumption decreased $40.3 billion in Q1, in contrast to an increase of $11.2 billion in Q4. Profits of domestic financial corporations at $28.4 billion in Q1, in contrast to $26.5 in Q4. Profits of domestic non-financial corporations decreased $18.4 billion, compared with a decrease of $60 billion in Q4. The rest of the world component increased $6.5 billion, compared with an estimate of $45.1 billion. The measurement is calculated the difference between receipts from the rest of the world and payments to the rest of the world. In the first quarter, receipts increased to $11.8 billion, and payments increased to $5.5 billion. And this is it. Now, on to the monthly advance report on manufacturing shipment, inventories, and orders, April of 2017. This was also out on the 26th of May. New orders for manufacturing durable goods for April decreased 1.6 billion, or 0.7% to 231.2 billion. That's from the U.S. Census Bureau. We decreased down following 4 consecutive months of increases, following a 2.3% March increase. Excluding transportation, new orders decreased 0.4%. Excluding defense, new orders decreased 0.8%. Transportation equipment down following 2 consecutive months of increases led to a decrease of $1 billion, or 1.2% to $78.5 billion. Shipments of manufactured durable goods in May down 3 of the last 4 months, a decrease 0.7 billion, or 0.3 to 233 billion, following a 1% decrease in March. Transportation equipment down 6 of the last months led to a decrease of 0.4 billion, or 0.5% to 77.2 billion. On-field orders for manufacturing durable goods in May up to consecutive months increased 2.4%, or 0.2% to 1,122.9 billion, following a 3% March increase. Transportation equipment also was up. 2 consecutive months led to an increase of 1.3 billion, or 0.2% to 766.6 billion. Inventories of manufactured durable goods in May up. The nine of the last 10 months increased 0.6 billion, or 0.1% to 394.2 billion, following a 0.2 increase in March. Fabricated metal products up 3 of the last 4 months and led to an increase of 0.3 billion and 0.6% to 404 billion. Capital goods, non-defense new orders for capital goods in April decreased 1.4 billion, or 1.9% to 70.4. Shipments decreased at 0.4 billion, or 0.5% to 69.7 billion. On-field orders increased at 0.7 billion, or 0.1% to 697.3 billion. Inventories decreased 1.2 billion, or 0.7% to 176.7 billion. Defense new orders for capital goods in April increased 0.4 billion, or 4.2% to 10.2 billion. Shipments increased 0.2 billion, or 1.7% to 10.2 billion. On-field orders decreased less than 0.1 billion, or virtually unchanged at 141.7 billion. Inventories increased 0.7 billion, or 3% to 22.3 billion. Revised and recent benchmarked March data, seasonal adjustments for all manufacturing industries for new orders at 468.9 billion, revised from 467.7 billion. Shipments at 469 billion, revised from 470 billion. On-field orders at 1,120.5 billion. That was revised from 1.19.0 billion. Total inventory at 647.5 billion, revised from 648.3 billion. Now, the advanced report on durable goods for May is scheduled on the 26th of June. So that is it from that particular inventory. And let's see if we have anything else here that we... we'll go ahead and do advanced monthly rentals. We don't want to miss out on that. Indo-OEN was 613.5 billion, down 0.3% there. And let me see where that is coming up. Just 1 second here. Did I say rentals? That's advanced monthly retail inventories. Let's skip down here to new residential sales. Very important here. And we'll do that one. New residential sales. That was retail sales. I'm sorry. Anyway, new home sales. This is from the Census Bureau and the U.S. Housing and Urban Development joint announcement for April of 2017. This was put out on the 23rd. New home sales, single-family housing in April were the seasonally adjusted annual rate of 569,000. According to estimates here, this is 11.4% below the revised March rate of 642,000, but it is 0.5% above the April estimate of 566,000. Sale price. The median sales price of new homes sold in April was at $309,200. The average price was $368,300. Sales inventory and month supply, season adjusted of new homes at the end of April was 268,000. This represents 5.7 month of current sales. Seasonal review. This is every April release. The adjusted estimate of housing units sold, housing units for sale, and the month supply of new housing from January 2005 to March 2007 has been revised. And let's see what else we have here. Well, these are several tables here, and we won't get into everything, but basically saying that roughly we had 599,000 here, and let me just get this up a little bit. And if we look at, this is for the whole U.S., let's look at it on a regional basis here. We can, wait a minute here. We'll start, okay, 599,000, and it was sold during the period in the Northeast, 43, let's see, yeah, 43,000, 73,000 in the Midwest, 338,000 in the South, and 145,000 in the West. This is for January here, and sold during the period, for sale at the end of the period in the whole U.S., 261,000. And let's see if we can get down here. This was in January to April, 569,000. 37,000 in the Northeast, 73,000, and let's see, 333,000. You need to find out what that table is. In the South, and 126,000 in the West, 268,000 in for sale at the end of the period. In April, 268,000 there. So in the West, we had 126,000, 333,000 in the South, and in the Midwest, 19,000 and 25,000 in the Northeast. 37,000, I'm sorry. 37,000 in the Northeast, 73,000 in, who is second on this? In the Midwest, and in the South, the third column, 260, wait a minute, 254,000 here, and 1231, okay. my columns. For 4 years, sold during the period, for sale at the end of the period. We'll just give this one. In April, 25,000 according to this. Now, we don't get medium prices. We really won't worry about this. This is from Reuters. The conclusion here, the U.S. economy slowed less than initially expected. We talked about that. It increased to 1.2 as 2.7 from the revised. The worst performance in the year, followed by 2.7 rate in the fourth quarter. Indicators so far aren't entirely convincing on a second quarter bounce in activity. That is from Scott Anderson at Bank of the West in San Francisco. First quarter weakness is a blow to DJ Trump's ambitious goal to boost the economy. In the campaign, he talked about GDP growing to 4%. Now he's talking about 3%. And that is kind of a marginal situation based on other types of now, analysts are skeptical that fiscal stimulus, if it materializes, will fire up the economy given a weak productivity and labor shortages in many areas. That is a problem there, no doubt about it. If the economy is going to grow at a 3% for as long as the eye can see, business better spend a lot more money on capital goods. This is not happening. That is from Joel Norskroff. He's Noroff, chief economist at Noroff Economic Advisor in Holland, Pennsylvania. The economy's struggliness is, however, probably not a true reflection of his health, as the first quarter GDP tends to underperform because of difficulties with calculation data. No doubt about that. But we go now to Q2 and Q3. Quarters that normally Q2 being the summer, you get the holidays, that sort of thing, is usually not as robust. You go to Q3 to really see what's going on. Economists had expected to be revised up to 9/10, a little better than 9/10. The dollar was was trading slightly higher against a basket of currencies. Well, April data disappointment. The economy appeared to have regained some speed early in Q1, and of course the bound didn't come there. It's one of those situations that happens out there. Shipments, these so-called core capital goods, dropped 1/10. We went through that, rising 2/10 in March. That was non-defense. We went through that particular report, and these estimates from 2% to 3% Q2 growth there, that's kind of exaggerated. It took us that many companies may be delaying equipment purchases to see if they get a better tax deal later down the road. Well, that later down the road will not materialize, at least towards the end of Q2, perhaps even Q3, if the so-called better deal would come. If the better deal comes, and that is very, very tenuous. Business inventories being up, so that's basically where they are in the scheme of things. And let me just, this is from Reuters. A little bit of a preview on China here. China reforms not enough to arrest mounting debt. That's according to Moody's. Structural reforms will slow the pace of its debt buildup, will not be enough to arrest it. That's what Moody's had to say. Company is possibly down the road unless another credit rating cut is possible down the road. Well, comments came 2 days after Moody's downgraded the sovereign rating at least one notch to A1, saying it expects the financial strength of the world's second economy to erode in the coming years as growth slows and debt continues to mount. It announced a downgrade. The investment service also changes outlook on China from a negative to stable, suggesting that no further rating change at this time. Well, you take this with basically a grain of salt in response. A senior official there, Marie Diron, said on Friday that the rating agency has been encouraged by the vast reform agenda taken by the Chinese authorities. Well, in China, that is sort of a mix of bag. Some of these reforms, now you have to understand the Chinese internal economy there and the number of people in the Chinese economy that have not been as well served by the expansion of the Chinese middle class. They're very, very important there, and some things need to be done. Moody's also waiting to see how some of the announced measures, such as reining in local financing, are actually implemented. Well, that's going to be very, very hard to do. China no longer gets an A1 rating if there is any sign that the debt is growing at a pace exceeding Moody's expectation. If there are signs China's debt will keep rising, well, the debt there is one of the things that happens, slows to around 5% in the coming year from, 6.7% last year. Compounded difficulties of reducing debt, Diane said the economy will remake robustly and likely hard landing is slim. The downgrade for China is the same level as on the Fitch, that's the overrating index, which Standard & Poor's still one notch above. That's several of these agencies out here. Fitch said it's maintaining its A+ rating on the Chinese economy. Strong macro track record, economic track, but saying that its growth has been accompanied by a buildup of imbalance and vulnerabilities that pose risks to its basic economic and financial stability. Well, there's always problems when you are driving as they've been forced to drive. China's economy has grown over recent years, but has been accomplished by runaway credit growth that's created a mountain of debt, now standing at 300% of GDP. Some analysts are worried about the speed at which the debt has accumulated than its absolute level. Well, this is also to be looked at a little bit differently, too. China, a very, very large economy, roughly at 1.2 billion people, cannot be measured by the same analytics as, say, you would measure the U.S. economy. Nonetheless, UBS estimates government debt, including explicit and quasi-government debt, rose to 68% of GDP in 2007 from 62% in 2005, while corporate debt climbed to 168% of GDP in 2016 and 153%. A number of economists believe that massive bank bailouts may be invincible in China as bad loans mount. Last September, the Bank of International Settlements warned that excessive credit growth in China signaled an increased risk of a banking crisis within 3 years. Well, that's not unusual. The U.S. had a banking crisis, and that will reorder things, and quite possibly it would slow some things, and as it did in the British economy and in the U.S. economy, involve a rethinking of structures. What we mean by that is, in the British economy, as in the U.S. economy, they took some banks, in other words, they dissolved some banks and fused others together in the U.S., and in the U.K. they took them under what they call administration. In other words, they nationalized the banks. And that is a solution to some of China's problems. The autumn meeting of the Chinese Communist Party is the most important event of the year. New generation up and coming leaders will usher in the standing committees and, of course, the core there under President Xi. Both party Congress, tricky affairs, no doubt about that. But they do have to address the needs of the people. There is no doubt on that. We'll go now to the BBC, and let me see where we are. The big headline here is revised up U.S. growth, 2.1% here. Amazon is opening new offline shops in New York. Newest brick and mortar stores. It's interesting they are going to this. That's probably an attempt to mop up what business they don't already have. Opened its 7th U.S. bookstore in New York on a Thursday, drawing a steady stream of selfies, etc. Gawkers, well, they always appear. Opened its first bookstore in Seattle in 2015. So in other words, they're taking on not only online, but they're offering the brick and mortar stores. Plans to have 13 in the U.S. Physical footprints on university campuses, experimenting with groceries and convenience stores. So in other words, what they're doing is moving into many areas they're not in. For Amazon, the smaller rivals which have stepped up face-to-face events such as offer readings to survive the company's physical expansion also adds to pressure. Well, it will, but the problem is, and this has happened before, that many of these private booksellers will remain in the business and they have a following, whereas Amazon's online following is there, but in our opinion, some of that is very, very artificial. And this is from Strand's bookstore. That's an institution in New York founded in 1927. Strand knows it cannot rest on its laurels, but the person here, Lee Altshuler, she thinks that the typical Amazon customer is looking for something different to those drawn to independent booksellers. No doubt about that. It is more of a mass book culture. The vice president of Amazon, Jennifer Cass, says the company's customer obsession force is driving the real world expansion. Obsessed force. Anyway, people have been asking for a place to check out books and test drive Amazon's tech products such as the Kindle. Well, that they'll be able to do, but you'll probably see the Kindle, if it's not already there, at the Best Buys of the world and places of that nature. Also, in New York, at the New York Bookshop, which is tucked away on the third floor of one of Manhattan's most upmarket shopping malls. The company organized books into new kinds of categories, such as page turns, books that Kindle readers finished in. Oh, I see. This is the Amazon thing. Well, so much for that. So much for that. Prime members and those sort of things. I've always felt that Amazon is one of those trends that's here, but as it gets more into the normal dynamic, it'll not be as it is. That's a strange way of saying things. What else have we got? Oh, keep working until you're 70. Well, it's a reality for many of us, no doubt about that. The World Economic Forum says that employers, and we did have something from them, I don't have it up here now, work until they're 70 in nations such as the U.S., U.K., Japan, and Canada. The increase will be needed as the number of people over 65 will more than triple in 2050. We won't be around for 2050, but by 2.1 billion. Then, by then, the number of workers per retiree will have happened to just 4. Michael Drexler, head of financial and infrastructure systems at the World Economic Forum, said he expects a rise in longevity, was the financial equivalent of climate change. We must address it if we to accept the adverse consequences that will haunt future generations. In the UK, state pension age is due to rise from 65 in 2018 to 68 in 2046. So they actually next year they're going from, in the U.S. You're at depending on where your age is, that rate is at like 66%. The last time I looked. A report from Department of Work and Pensions earlier this year suggested that workers under 30 may not get a state pension until they are 70. That's a disgrace. The auto re-enrollment schemes, more than 6 million British workers have now been signed up automatically. The Forum reports we live to 100. How can we afford it? Says the government needs to make it easier for workers to save for their retirement, and praise the UK's reforms. I wonder. Who now have been signed up automatically. Now, I'm not sure. I see. The reform savings, retirement savings gap was forecast to rise to from 70 trillion to 400 trillion by 2000. By 2050 in 8 countries. That's Australia, Canada, China, India, Japan, and the Netherlands, UK, and US. The gap is the amount of money required in each country to ensure retirement income equal to 70% of pre-retirement. That's going to be a very interesting situation. We'll have to get this out from the next report and look at in Denmark, where an online dashboard correlates pension information to give individuals details of different pension savings accounts. Financial literacy there, but part of the problem we have in the U.S. with people changing jobs every roughly 4 to 5 years, there is not that type of guarantee available. Let me just look at this. Sign up automatically. I'm not certain what this is. 6 million save automatically for pensions. This is was last year that was out in the BBC. More than 6 million workers have now signed up automatically to a pension savings scheme, but fear remains over how much is being set aside. The latest government auto enrollment has seen a 95% compliance rate among small business. All employers will eventually need to offer pensions to everyone who is over 22 who earns more than £10,000 a year, introducing a gradual process of 66% of employers now signed up. The latter stage are widely seen as the most challenging, as employees such as nannies, care workers, plumbers, bar staff enrolled into pensions. This means employers who only have 1 or 2 staff may need to add additional pension plans. The auto scheme was started in 2012, aims to ensure that workers save to enable them to pick up their top off their state pensions plans. MPs there. I'm wondering how this is going to work. It looks like a 401k program. New figures from the pension regulators show that the average contribution from an employer is 3% of the worker's salary. These challenges include questions over whether enough is being put into those pension pots. No doubt. Steve Webb, now the Director of Policy at Royal London Insurance Company, was a pension minister when the system was created, he said such contribution rates are woefully inadequate. The fact that the average employer contribution rate among firms is so far as just 3% is not very much at all. The maximum contribution rate will increase from 2% to 5%. That'll be next year in April of 2018, and from 5% to 8% the next year, 2019. Spokesman for Work and Pensions said we want to make it easy as possible for businesses to manage automatic enrollment, which is why we made a decision for gradual increases in the amount employers contribute to workplace pensions. We don't really have enough information on that to speak as we should. Sometimes there's a situation where we just simply don't have the information, and we have to kind of sort of move along, as one would say, on as to how it would be. Nonetheless, let's do the numbers now. We have some Gallup data here also, but well. Now this is the American Confidence in the American Economy study at +4 last week, and it gives some information here. Major stock market index declined by 2% last Wednesday, making it the largest one-day loss since September of 2016. Analysts see the drop reflecting concern in many stock traders and finance fears that the Trump administration will be too clouded by scandal to pursue its market-friendly economic agenda. This is from Gallup, incidentally. Americans' confidence in the economy remains notably lower than where it stood in the early part of the year, in particular the inauguration of DJ Trump. It climbed to a +14 as Republican attitudes on the economy improved. The index also recorded a 9-year high, +16 in February to March the 5th. The index has been unable to sustain that type of optimism and has fallen closer to neutral level. Needlessly, the assessment remains positive, was certainly the case in 2008 when the Depression was there. Gallup's U.S. Economic Confidence Index is the average of two components: how Americans rate current economic conditions and whether they believe the economy is improving or getting worse. The index theoretical maximum is +100 if all Americans were to say the economy is doing well and improving. The theoretical minus is a -100, and for the week ending the 21st, 34%, Americans assessed the economy as excellent or good, while 22% said it was poor. Overall condition component averaged +12 for the week, up 4 points from the previous week. However, slightly more Americans say the economy was getting worse at 49% rather than getting better at 45%. That is a -4 change. The bottom line is when the news regularly suggests that politically the country is in uncharted waters, it wouldn't be necessarily be surprising if turmoil exact a toll on confidence in the economy. And I think this is a point we made earlier. Americans remain slightly more positive and negative about the economy, largely because they think current economic conditions are good. Their outlook for the economy has been less positive in recent weeks, like many on Wall Street. So that is it. And we'll go now and do the numbers. All right. To the stock market data, I think that's what we have. Oh, well, we'll get it in a minute here. These will be Friday unless otherwise noted. The Global 30 on Friday was at 107.81, the BBC Global 30. The FTSE All-Share was at 15.47. In Amsterdam, they were 0.57 there and on Friday. And in Frankfurt, the DAC was down 19.54. In Paris, shot by Paris here, in the negative at 0.52 on Friday, and in Brussels they were at 6.56. In Madrid, they were down on Friday at 33.50 in the negative. In Zurich, 6.94. In Moscow, the negative 16.63. In Johannesburg, also in the negative at 294.82. In Bombay, 278.18. In Karachi, they were in the negative also at 2.32. 2.32.14 in the negative, and in Lahore at 45.11 in the negative, and in Colombo also 17.09 in the negative, and in Tehran on Wednesday 21.80. In Sydney, they were in the negative also, negative 36.70. The Nikkei was negative 126.29. And Hang Seng in Hong Kong was 8.49. In Shanghai, they were 2.23. And the Nasdaq was down 2.67. The Merc was 4.94. Oh, the Nasdaq, 4.94. The Merc was also in the positive range at 0.75. In San Pablo, 1,046.117 in the negative on Monday. And in Mexico on Friday, they were negative 648.42. On to the commodities we go. And see where Brent crude is. That's usually the biggest one we look at. Brent crude futures on a Friday were up 70 cents at $52.16. The spot was down $2.53 at $51.23. West Texas Intermediate crude oil futures were up 89 cents at $49.79. T-Boone Pickers jumping for joy. He remembers $15 a barrel oil. Gold was up $7.90. Not sure why that was. This is the Forex index at $1,265. In Dubai, the futures there were down $1.30 at $1,258.50. Silver was up $14 at $17.29 an ounce. On we go. Euronext live futures. Cocoa was up $50. Robusta coffee was down. Wait a minute here. Was up $27. And finally, the Bloomberg Commodities Index at 84.1. That was on a Friday. So it increased at 0.30. This will do it for us, and this information is provided to BBC by digitaloutlook.com. Now we know. For those in business, make it a productive week. For the consumer, keep your eye on the prize. In the U.S., coming up, the Memorial Day holiday. A happy holiday to everyone there. And this will be one of the busiest travel days of the summer. And we'll be looking at the price of petrol, where it is. It's went up slightly in some locations. We don't have the gas averages. But we'll do that next week because we'll have a little indication of how summer traveling will start to kick off as we enter the month of June 2017. Good day.